Hello everyone, welcome to this panel looking at AI's role in the biodiversity crisis at the launch of the AI for Nature initiative. As Lucy mentioned, I'm Tess Coley. I'm the Deputy Editor of the environmental magazine END Report, and I've been covering UK environmental policy and politics for a good few years now. And I think one of the only things that's matched the pace of change that we've seen in AI in the last year is the speed at which the data shows we're moving towards these ecological and climate tipping points, which I'm sure everyone in this room knows all about, but it feels more than timely to be having this conversation now. But yes, so without further ado, Shashin, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what you're here today?
I'm Shashin. I lead the BNGI business called AiDASH. We use the Earth observation data and apply AI to measure biodiversity, identify habitats, and measure nature value at scale. We've been doing it for a few years now, before the regulation went live, but now we find that the biggest push and the drive for the need for a solution like this is not just coming from the regulatory needs, but actually coming from voluntary requirements which organizations in Europe, in the US, and not just in the UK want to be able to do, to make sure that the land that they're working on is left as good as it was before they started making land. And our biggest driver for joining this alliance is realizing that globally, when it comes to nature restoration, we are at a point of inflection where the scale of work to be done is increasing exponentially. But if we were to continue with the conventional means of doing things, it wouldn't scale well. It wouldn't be able to deliver the right result, and hence the use of technology is going to happen. So with this alliance, we want to be able to participate, contribute towards effective use of AI, being able to make an impact at scale, and enabling users as well as the rest of the industry.
Thank you. Tom, would you like to go next?
Yeah, hello everybody. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces and friends here. So, my name is Tom Budgeworth. I work for Arup. If you're not aware of who Arup is, we're a very large multidisciplinary consultancy, sustainable development consultancy, and I lead our work on nature, which is a delight. Why am I here? So, there are things that happen that surprise us all. The fact that it wasn't people getting square eyes from TV, but the obesity crisis that suddenly became something that everybody should be talking about. Phones, our computers got so small, but we carry them around. And those things make shifts and changes in how we see the world in a way that is fundamental and often mispredicted or not predicted. And I was reading a book a few years ago called The Future by Al Gore, which when I was trying to remember this, I read as AI Gore, but that's just getting a bit carried away, isn't it? And he predicted a whole load of changes, and lots of them around are absolutely spot on. The increase of robots, the globalization of communications, shift in geopolitics, biotechnology, neuroscience, this is a quote, flawed economic compass, and there was definitely a big digital piece of that. And it maybe because I found it quite hard to read, but I didn't see anything about AI in there. If I had done this properly, I would have got AI to do a quick summary of it, so I could check. But I didn't see AI being a major piece that would completely transform our world, and that was just 2013. You know, he's a bright person. This is why I'm here, because this has the potential to make a fundamental shift in how we understand our environment and nature, and that relationship between us and the natural world. That's an exciting time to be working in this space, isn't it?
Thank you, Tom. We'll get into all of that later. Mark?
Thank you. Back to follow, Tom. Thanks. So I'm head of professional practice at the Chartered Institute of Ecology and Environmental Management, and we're a professional body, and we represent around 9,000 practitioners, and growing rapidly. And we know that our members are already using AI tools and techniques. And I'm here really because I think we're at the point now where we need to decide whether AI is done to our sector or whether we are in the room and shaping the types of tools and technologies and the way that they're used. So last year, we held an AI workshop and a number of people in the room contributed to that. And one of the recommendations from that workshop was the formation of partnerships like this that give the opportunity for people who are practicing ecologists and environmental managers to come together with the providers of AI tools and techniques and potentially regulators and statutory nature bodies as well, and talk about not just what is technically possible to do with AI, but what is actually going to be useful to practitioners and what is going to allow them to achieve better outcomes for nature and potentially improve their well-being and improve the capacity within the sector as well. So that's the reason that CIEEM are part of the partnership.
All right, well, thanks everyone. So I want to start looking at the opportunities and responsibilities. We'll start with opportunities of AI in the nature space. Mark, you just said, you don't want AI to be done to ecologists. So where do you feel the environmental, ecological sector could benefit most from AI? Where, if in the room, where would you want to see it used most?
So I think there are a number of areas in which the environmental sector is already benefiting from AI. And I think I don't want to steal any thunder from Anna because there's some really exciting things that are on the horizon as well, which I think will have a really big impact. I think access to evidence and the ability to support evidence-based decision-making and judgments made in the field. So my background is ecological restoration, and I was lucky enough to be able to do a 3-year PhD working out a very narrow thing to work out whether it's effective or not. But commercial ecologists in the field, huge workload, lots of stressors, do not have the time to do a literature review to work out whether it's best to sow a particular species or wildflower seed mix in 1 month or another month. And I think the types of tools that are emerging from things like conservation evidence that will give better and more democratic access to quick judgments that can then support practice in the field are really, really exciting. So I think the use of AI tools in support of evidence-based practice is really exciting. I think use of tools which allow us to improve and prioritise survey effort so that ecologists can get on with the things that are really useful and really important and focus on the implementation and the delivery of restoration are also a really good opportunity. And just like with any other sector, although I'd say our members may have been slightly slower to adopt than some other sectors, and there's a reason behind that perhaps, but just like any other sector, if you are a freelance ecologist, for example, then AI tools can be a really powerful way of you to expand your business and improve the efficiency of the work that you're doing, and we're doing the same in the Secretariat at CIEEM to be able to do that. But I think the important thing is the use of AI tools to improve outcomes for nature and well-being within the sector.
And I mean, you said that the uptake's been a bit slower, but is that how widespread is the uptake so far? Would you say, like, how is it already in use? This is already happening.
It's already in use. So we have a number of sources of evidence to support that. So not least, we ran a summer conference last year which had an AI theme. So we put out an open call for paper for practitioners to tell us how they're using AI tools. And it was really difficult to slim that down into a one-day conference program because there were so many examples that practitioners shared with us. So we do know that it's being used widely within the sector. But we know from surveys within our own organisation as well as membership that there are maybe 20% of people who are not using AI. And I think that's a really interesting aspect of this partnership, really, is working out why they're not using it, what the risks to them of not using it are, and overcoming any of the barriers for them making effective use of it and trusting it.
Okay, great. We'll come on to some of those risks later, I think. But Shashin, I wanted to just bring you in here. So Biodiversity Net Gain is one of the biggest UK nature policy mechanisms to come in recent years. And AiDASH, that it's made NetGain, one of the things it's working on, right? So could you just tell us a bit more about what exactly the technology you offer does, and like what's the response been? How widespread has the uptake been?
Yes, so the technology, it creates a habitat map at a very high scale for the habitats it finds on the ground, and then applies the metric to measure biodiversity, and then provides further tools for people to go onto site, do a condition assessment really quickly using the tech, come back, as they capture notes on the site, all of that information is taken in, and then AI writes drafts of the reports, making it really fast regardless of the size of the land to be able to summarize and then create an output that's consistent. So the biggest benefits we offer to our users are scale and consistency of being able to do the job. In terms of uptake, as it is with any regulation, when the regulation first went live, people want to be able to figure out, can I avoid doing it? Because that's usually seen as a cost, a burden. But as months rolled by and became clear that it's going to stay, maybe mutate a little, but it's not really going to go away. There's been adoption. What was interesting to see from the beginning was that the delayed reaction was more common from the smallest of the market participants, who probably felt it as a big burden on them. But the biggest market participants, they wanted to be able to get ready, use the right technology, and just make it a competitive advantage. So in terms of the uptake, where we stand right now, we see that most of the largest developers in the country, they want to be able to use this as a competitive advantage, being able to identify the right piece of land to do the development on, place where they can do the B&G at the least cost. So that comes in early from site identification and then goes all the way down to the 30-year delivery. One big challenge that people are only starting to realize now is the 30-year monitoring requirement. So it's not one time you get done with the planning application and it's through. You have to deliver it over 30 years, you have to demonstrate that you've done it. And I know that when the first project we did for B&G, when that is finally being closed 30 years later, I think I'll be retired. So same would be the case for many more people.
Okay, thank you. Tom, you work for a big consultancy. NetGain, we just talked about NetGain. NetGain's a big deal for environmental consultants, brings in lots of work. How much, there must be a lot of potential for AI to remove the sort of legwork that environmental consultants are brought in to do. Benefits to that, obviously. Tell us what they are, but could potentially backfire, for companies like yours.
That's a lovely question. Well, I think it's really important that what we're trying to do is to deliver the right place. It's not to make a ton of money. It's not to employ a certain number of people. It's not even to have a nice office and nice coffee, although that is a huge benefit. But it's actually, we talk about it as building a better world. And that might feel a little crass, but it's true. That's what we're trying to do. If we can do that better, if we can do that faster, cheaper, and greener with AI, absolutely, it's the right thing to do. What does that do for our jobs? It allows us to do different things. It means that, I can barely write with a pen, frankly. But type, yes, no problem at all. My point is that, could I sit there and write with a pen and ink? And, no. Things shift and change. What it frees us up to do is then go beyond. Okay, we can get the biodiversity NetGain, we can run that quickly, we can do the baseline, we can automate all of that work. Fantastic. It means the ecologists can go out and not look at every flipping arable field, but actually go and take the time to look at the piece of high-quality grassland that's on the site. It means that we can then think about the design properly and get the proper integrated nature-based solutions into that design. And it means that we can then test and show that those nature-based solutions deliver the outcome we want. That's a much more interesting job than writing an EIA chapter. Yeah? That's where we're heading.
Okay, what was going to be my next question? Where do you see AI applications for nature going in the future? I mean, you've been reading Al Gore, so
It was a while ago. But so one of our biggest challenges is that we know nature provides a whole load of benefits for us. In our cities, our rural area, wherever we are, it's cooling our cities, it's decreasing flood risk, it's improving our health and well-being. But when we're designing places, and we need to make sure, let's say, we're decreasing flood risk, we have to do that in a very, very specific way based on topology, etc., of that land and how we're developing that site. It's almost impossible at the moment to take into account the positive impact that the woodland is having, because how much flood risk does that woodland, specifically that woodland, not any woodland, not a sort of average woodland, that woodland decrease? We have got the opportunity here to use digital techniques, whether it be gathering the data on the site and then using AI to transform and understand that data, to give the assurance that these ecosystems are providing the benefits that we're building into our systems. This means designing, co-designing with nature. That is something that we've been talking about for a very long time, but haven't been able to do. AI can open that door for us.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to move on in a minute to a different subject, but Shashan, I was looking on AiDASH's website earlier today, and obviously net gain's a big part of it, but there's lots of other areas that the companies applying AI, like wildfire mitigation, storm resilience, that sort of thing. I guess kind of the same question I put to Tom. What's the next thing? Where is AI going to be applied next? Where's the opportunity there?
I think it's a combination of the different things that we do on the land. When we talk about climate resiliency, wildfire mitigation, biodiversity net gain, nutrient neutrality, often it's the same land that we're talking about. We want to be able to improve biodiversity, we want to capture more carbon, we don't want it to burn down. So being able to do all of that, being able to say whether I'm meeting my B&G targets, if we are creating the right amount of carbon units, are we protecting it? Often the way this works is it's different people, different teams, but using technology, you can combine all the information, you can make a central place where you have a full big picture truly being seen. And I think that's where the future applications lie, where you're not just doing your operations and your nature mitigation and resiliency as separate subjects with separate people, but you're bringing it all together as a common tool set in a common place to make a decision that creates value but also protects it.
Okay, thank you. So obviously we're all here today, or you're all here today because you're very supportive of this initiative, you're the co-founders, but I think it's important to talk about the fact that not every story about AI is a positive one, certainly when it comes to nature. And I guess the big one that I've certainly reported on and come across a lot is the impact on water supply. And I was checking up on this earlier, but at the moment the EA anticipates a shortfall of nearly 5 billion litres of water per day by 2050. And AI, I also read, so the GPT-3, which is the language model, which was the basis of ChatGPT, that used 700,000 litres of water just in the pre-training phase. So we're talking about using more of this technology and having a boom in it at a time when this is a vulnerable ecosystem we're coming into anyway. How, and obviously high energy demands that go along with it, how do you square the circle of these aspects of the technology with this push and desire to use more of it? Mark, I will start with you.
Thank you. I think it can't be the elephant in the room, and I think that's one of the reasons for this partnership. And I think the ENDS article towards the end of last year, and there's a good podcast as well that I'd recommend listening to.
Thanks, Mark.
The plug. Suggests that one reason that take-up may have been a little bit slower in our sector is because naturally we are concerned about the environmental impacts. I think a really important thing is to ask yourself, will this use of AI result in a positive outcome for nature? So if this information that I'm able to find more quickly is going to allow me to make a more effective intervention or implement a more effective monitoring strategy that's going to allow me to adapt the management of the habitat that I'm responsible for to cope with more frequent drought, for example, then that's a positive use of AI, whereas using it to undress politicians is not a positive use of AI. So I think that's one thing. Does it have a positive impact for nature of the work that you're doing? And then the other thing is not using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. So I know that there is a lot, and I'm not an AI expert really, but I know there's a lot of energy and I know there's a lot of water consumption that can go into training and using large models, and we don't necessarily always need to be doing that. Once that phase is done and we're applying tools in the field and we can use them offline, then it doesn't come with the same environmental impact as it might have done. Being a member of CIEEM comes with a personal responsibility as well as a professional obligation to reduce your climate change impact. So I think it is a big concern for our members, and it is something that we need to reflect on. And I think that we need to keep advocating for net zero policies, and we need to be challenging the providers of AI tools on their energy and water consumption as well. But people are going to be using those tools, so I think that's why it's really important to be part of this partnership and share those views.
Tom, do you agree? Do you have any other hot take?
Only that it's really critical that we look this in the eye, because us and the industry are also part of that solution to this. We need lithium for batteries, and I don't know if you remember, a little while ago people were saying, oh, this is going to be more lithium than we can possibly get, and so on. And what happened is a huge innovation to decrease the lithium needed in those batteries massively. Doesn't stop the need to support the people getting that lithium, and there's a whole load of work there, but it's a huge shift. When cars first came in, it meant no more horse dung all over our streets, but it created other problems. We're working actively with the companies that are setting up data centers to see how we can minimize or avoid completely water use. And we're getting increasingly air-cooled systems. We're looking at how we can deliver biodiversity net gain in those sites, and how we can then also decrease energy use by using natural cooling and actually working with nature to support natural cooling systems. Are we there yet? Absolutely not. Can we move in the right direction? Yes. And we need everybody to do that. Again, that's why this group is so valuable.
Okay, Shash, same question, but just to amend it slightly. Like, I know you're all going to agree there's problems, but we must find a way forward. So what would exactly what does sustainable AI growth look like? What would need to be different next year than is happening today to make it more sustainable?
So I think as with all things, context matters a lot. So you mentioned the amount of water GPT-3 used in pre-training. I think the amount of carbon it released was about 550 tons. But that's the training and pre-training part. The next is when we start using it, when it releases to the public, and that's inference. The amount of energy that it uses in inference is orders of magnitude less. So while preparing for this today, I looked up what is the amount of carbon that is released if you utilize 1 million tokens on Claude's, Anthropic's Claude Sonnet 4.5. That's 400 grams. I looked up Claude because we use it a lot ourselves. 400 grams of carbon is about 2 miles of driving a petrol car. So if in those million tokens, we can analyze, let's say 5 sites, which is of about our average size, which is what we can do. You've reduced the need for that many miles of cars being driven. Even if it's an electric car that the ecologist is driving, based on the grid, it could still be 50 to 100 grams per kilometer for carbon being emitted. So that's one way to look at it. When we are using it, how much water and carbon are we using and emitting the carbon as compared to the alternative? The next bit is, as the technology is evolving, the models themselves are becoming more efficient at being trained. So the newer models of GPT, I think they've got about 60% less usage of less emission of carbon. But then we go beyond that, and we've got now micro models coming up. So that would make it possible for us to be able to take small, very targeted models being deployed as part of the app that run directly on the device of the ecologist standing on the field. And that reduces the need of amount of energy that's going to go behind training those models, as well as the amount of energy that's going to be utilized by those models. So, like all things, as Tom talked about, not using water, moving to air-cooled solutions for the entire data center. The models themselves are evolving, the way technology is evolving, we can run it on small devices, and that can cause a multiplier effect on top of the efforts that are being taken for data centers, for example.
Yeah, so I think innovation on AI might make AI more sustainable. I hear that. I suppose what I read a lot about now and is a lot of kind of pushes around AI, data centers obviously coming forward now, and there's no regulation really around it. The water supply concerns aren't being taken into account as much as some would like them to be. And regulation is obviously a hot topic around AI more broadly, not just in this environmental aspect. But I'm curious, Shashin, would you welcome more regulation in AI? And if so, and I'd like to ask you two as well, what would better regulation on AI in the environment sector look like?
I welcome smart regulation in AI. The industry is catching up really fast. We want regulators to be able to be aware of what's being done, how the industry actually is building and deploying solutions, and then create regulations that allow for a responsible, a scalable way of utilizing the technology for good, but also in a way that it does not really restrict the use of technology. Mm-hmm. So I think that would be the really key. The workforce of the future is going to be using AI more and more heavily. Everybody's phone is going to, they already have AI, but more and more tools around that. So regulations that do not really support that or are lagging behind significantly and continue to do so, I think they are going to become detrimental to the growth and will prevent us further from achieving the kind of goals we're talking about. So I think that's one thing I would like to welcome.
Okay. Mark, let's go to you next.
I agree. I also think it's about professional obligations. So one of the things that we need to encourage is, at least at the time being, is the responsible use of AI and the disclosure by people who are using AI. And that already exists in the sense that we have a competency framework, we have a code of professional conduct, and theoretically, if someone were to use AI tools in practice, without adequate verification, then that's a breach of the code of professional conduct, because you are required to use evidence appropriately, you're required to apply and justify your professional judgment. So to use an AI tool and to not disclose that you've used an AI tool, or to take the outputs from an AI tool that could hallucinate a research paper, could hallucinate a football match, and use those without checking, without the human in the loop checking, would be a breach of our code of professional conduct. But because the tools are new, it's really important that we actually provide those case studies and we provide that guidance to prevent those kind of inadvertent errors that I think are inevitable at the early stages, but potentially could have quite big negative consequences for nature. So I think I agree with what Shashin said around regulation, but around professional obligation as well, that falls on the individual practitioners, but with the support that people like the partnership and a professional body can provide by the way of training.
Okay, thank you. Tom, would you welcome more regulation?
This is tricky. I worked in government for 10 years and I thought more regulation was the one thing that's going to save the world. I'm not sure now.
I don't think the current government thinks that.
I also think I may have hallucinated a football match once or twice, but I think we need the right regulation. and we need stability of regulation. And those two things are difficult because it needs to be stability over the long term, over multiple parliaments, ideally, let alone one parliament. We need to make sure that we are respecting the environment in everything we do. And that means looking after water, land, sea, air, and biodiversity. That needs to be regulated for those organisations that are impacting on those things. Are those regulations adequate now? No. We can improve them, but it doesn't mean radical change. It means getting it right. And there's a sixth piece that we must get alongside all of that, is about getting this right for people and communities. These data centres are in places, which means, yes, it's about that catchment, the water catchment. Yes, it's about the ecosystem it's part of, but it's also about that community. So yes, it's the right regulations, and we've got bits of it already. We just need to help take that next step. And perhaps part of that can be about standardization as well, about standards that we work to, as well as the regulations, principles we work to. So there are steps we can all take.
Okay. I haven't got too much time left, so I'm going to spin through a few things. Under the banner of responsibilities around AI, impact on jobs is a thing everyone talks about across all sectors. Ecology is no different, and nature, environment's no different. Mark, this is directed to you. There's not a consensus among ecologists, including those, I'm sure, within CIEEM, that AI is going to do good things for the profession at large. You know, it could lead to a loss of conservation skills, some people think. Others have concerns about a lack of skepticism in AI and a reliance on it. You know, basically, what's your view? Can you remove that early on experience and still end up with experienced professionals?
So will AI lead to an erosion of skills?
Yeah.
So this was a key concern that was raised at the workshop that we held last year, and the consensus that emerged was that the risk wasn't AI itself, but how it's implemented and how it's governed and how it's taught alongside ecological training. So what we want is for AI tools to augment and complement ecological expertise and not replace them. I think it's... So I've worked for about 20 years in some shape or form around building skills and capacity, and with colleagues in the room who've done research for CIEEM as well. And I'd actually put AI quite a long way down the list in terms of risks and barriers to skills and capacity within the sector. Over-reliance of traditional academic pathways that are increasingly expensive and increasingly inaccessible for people is a risk. I think that over-reliance in certain parts of the sector on people needing to do a substantial amount of unpaid experience to be ready in the employment market has been a risk, and simply the cost of owning a car and having a driving license to be able to travel to field sites has been a risk. So I think all of those are things that we've worked on over the years to try and overcome through things like developing apprenticeships and skills boot camps that we've been running. And I think it's also important for partnerships like this one to be able to share with academics and institutions who are teaching those skills and pass those on to their charges. And I mentioned this just before the meeting, but I'm genuinely concerned that neither of my kids who are currently teenagers have had any exposure in their education to AI other than a blanket, don't use them to produce your coursework or in your exams. And I am quite concerned about how that will impact their ability in the employment market. But I think AI it's a new tool, just like genetic analysis, when that became cheaper and easier and more available, was a new tool that augments expertise. And I think the other thing that I would say, you got me on the soapbox now because it's about skills, but I think we know that our sector is the second least diverse after agriculture. So we know that we do well on gender, but we don't do very well by ethnicity and disability and by social class. And one issue is having visible role models and being able to translate your experience of nature to how you could make a career in it. And where I actually see, and I know there are mixed views on this, but where I see some really positive uses of AI is in things like the Merlin Bird ID app, which I think now has something like 1.5 million users. And I genuinely think if those tools are available to help people understand more about what they're seeing, the plants and fungi they're seeing, or the birds that they're hearing, then that can help you to care more for those, and caring more for those includes pursuing a career that will help you do that. But we need to show those pathways are there. So I think AI is a risk, but I think there are opportunities in AI there as well, and I don't think it's the biggest risk to skills and capacity within the sector at all.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to move on to another subject on this. Either would you like to add on that? No. Okay. So I'm going to squeeze this in before rounding up. But so we've discussed regulation. There not being much of it at the moment on AI. Certainly in journalism, when it comes to journalism, there's a huge conversation about how do you maintain trust in what the output is, and the importance of human verification, transparency. I know Marty touched on that earlier when AI is used. How important do you think transparency about AI deployment is, when it's used for environmental tasks? And I suppose, how, more than just do you think it's important, how do you maintain that trust? What, on practical, maybe Shashan, on a practical level, what does it mean to be transparent about usage?
The first thing that's given is letting people know that AI has been used. And our solution is driven by AI. So that's a given. The next is giving users the confidence in being able to use it. So if they see something being done by AI, how sure can they be in it? And what we've actually broken it down into is 3 parts, which is, and this is an industry common, which is AI can do some work, but then is it being delivered to the user before a human has looked at it? And so far, given the regulatory context of the BNG, our approach has been to make sure that it's always looked at by a human before the user sees it. They may still disagree, but we find that if you send 2 ecologists on the field, they still sometimes disagree. It's no 2 people are going to always agree on entirely on what they find on the ground. So as long as we are within that range, it's fine. But now as we're trying to scale it further, the goal is to build something that is sampled by people so that people are never really out of the loop. So what we call it as, what we do right now is we call it as human in the loop. As we are scaling globally, that becomes human on the loop. But it's really important that it's never human out of the loop. That's the key aspect. As we go from human in the loop, where you have a guarantee that somebody has looked at the output before the user gets it, to human on the loop, where they may not have looked, but it's going to get sampled and it's going to go through a process there. It's really important that with that shift, the AI starts to share a confidence level on what it's finding. So that if it says that what I'm finding is, let's say, a modified grassland, not a neutral grassland, what's the confidence level? If that confidence level is low, can the user should be able to then make a conscious call and a smarter call around what do I need to do with this information? Otherwise, the information is not complete if that's not being shared. And finally, it comes down to using AI more in a kind of scenario where most of us use it to make it write something for us, but for very specific reasons, like writing a report, that you go to a site and now it's writing a report for you. For those applications, our approach is that it should always be reviewed by the user. AI should not, for some things that as critical as this, AI should not be in a position where it just sends a report out without the expert having a say in changing it.
Okay, thank you. Tom, I'm going to put that to you as well. You've done a big report, a big EIA report for a big development. How do you maintain trust with the client that it is the AI that you've deployed on it has done the job right?
What's important is that the client trusts that Arup's done the job right. So we have a set of principles that we work to, and this isn't nice to have, this is we have to work to. We have agreed that we will communicate if AI is used before we use it. We agree before we use it with the client. We then make sure that absolutely there is a person in that, reviewing that, and so that it does not go out simply without that human input. And we've got projects where there is no AI used and where there's lots, and everything in between. But it is 100% transparent, and not in the small print at the bottom, but really clear. The only other thing I'd like to add to this is I think this is a today issue. Because I think in 10 years' time, this will be so ubiquitous that it won't be about has it been used. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be absolutely transparent and clear. I'm just saying that I think this is something we're worrying about now rightly, but I think in 10 years' time, we'll probably be like saying, well, it'll be like saying, have you used a computer in this? Yeah, we have. Yep. We put this together with a PowerPoint presentation. We didn't draw those slides. Do you remember those things? So, yeah, really being clear and transparent. And I think, again, doing that in a way across the industry so that we're all meeting that is going to be even more powerful. Because it points then, it allows us to do this honestly.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I'm at time, so I'm gonna, no watch on my wrist, I'm gonna call it there. Thank you so much for answering all my questions, and I hope it's been a good discussion for you all. No Q&A, as I said. I'm gonna hand over now to the next speaker.